Hey everyone, I'm here with Tom Butler, Executive Director at ThinkPad for Lenovo. I'm very excited. I've known Tom for a couple of years now. Him and I, every time we meet up for press announcements and everything, we end up just going over all the hardware. And Tim and I really get into sort of the technology behind it, the design constraints, what they have to do and their goals with the products. And I know I've learned a lot from, what goes into this business. And Tom has a couple of things to talk about today. Uh, One of them is a very interesting concept you guys are working on, and I know you're looking for some feedback from users. So this has to do with the new ThinkPad Z13 series, which was announced at CES. And I really like these series. Like, I can't wait to get my hands on these devices. They feature AMD Ryzen systems in them, completely built around the AMD system. And I know a lot of people in our audience are looking for that. People love Intel, but there's an AMD crowd that wants that. And these Ryzen 6000 mobile chips, we haven't tested them, but are looking very promising in terms of battery life and performance. And they even use the Pluton chip, and there's all sorts of cool stuff, but they also have more of a modern design. So Tom, why don't you explain to the audience sort of the goals you had with the Z13, and then we can get into the actual kind of concept device update that you guys are thinking about doing to it.
Yeah, sure, Dan. Thanks so much for the questions and the comments on this. And yes, we really had two exciting announcements. First at CES, we unveiled our new X1 lineup, X1 Carbon, X1 Yoga, X1 Nano, and then we launched an all-new series, the Z series. And as you said, we really took a step back and looked at customers not buying ThinkPad today and what were some of those elements that resonated with them or aspects of the device. And we also sort of paired that with what was happening in pandemic, the move to work from home that started to open back up and to move more to a work from anywhere, but still with a collaboration focus in mind. And what we came out with was this all new Z series design. I'll really start from sort of the outside in, sort of focusing down from the top. A lot of this was based on three key areas. We had, of course, design, aesthetic. We had focus on choice, and that would be choice of materials, colors, and finish. And then a third element that really started coming out strongly was sustainability. And so I'll talk a little bit more about these. But if you just look at the design, the first thing you're going to notice is this is a leather cover bronze accent. We have actually three choices, and I'll just put my Z16 up for contrast. I'm showing an aluminum chassis, silver polished accents. We also have a black aluminum cover and with silver polished accents. But the bronze is probably the one that stands out most in terms of just the aesthetic, the design. You'll see, again, sort of that polished bronze accent. And it conveys sort of a new progressive design for us. For, again, those customers that are not buying ThinkPad today, we have our very solid traditional ThinkPad design with our flagship X1 lineup all the way through T series, X series, L series. But we wanted to sort of provide a different choice in market. So that was the start. And then, as I mentioned, the choice, having that choice of different colors, materials, and finish. But the third element that really came out strongly was the sustainable message. And so really from the ground up, we built this with sustainability in mind. And it was a meaningful sustainable claims. It's not just put a minor percentage of post-consumer content in a small part. But these chassis are 75% recycled aluminum. We have this leather cover is actually 100% recycled PET material. So it's effectively recycled water bottles inside this material. We moved our power supplies, speaker enclosures, battery cases to 97% post-consumer content. So again, trying to make big strides forward on the sustainable message as much as we did on the performance. You mentioned, exclusive partnership with AMD and really driving a significant performance leap gen to gen as we go to the Ryzen Pro 6000 platform. But the sustainability also carried forward even into our packaging. And I'll be honest, this is probably the first time I've ever been truly excited about packaging.
Right. Yeah.
But I did want to show you very quickly, we did a complete revamp of our packaging. exterior, we moved to a completely plastics-free, and then in the interior design, and again, we'll do a tops down. This you can see we did this for both our X1 and the Z series. This is a bamboo sugarcane rapid compostable packaging. So the interior box, which will contain, in this case, the Z series, will be packaged or housed in this type of material. So it's really the most sustainable material we could put forward into the design, and it just further emphasizes the focus and attention to a sustainable message.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you mentioned it is funny, as I've been following this field for the last few years, I see more and more OEMs talk about sustainability in the packaging, and I don't think people quite appreciate it. I mean, as someone who receives a lot of laptops for review, you see, that for years it was plastic, it was styrofoam, and you'd get this, and then you just immediately have to throw it away. The only thing that was sort of recyclable was the cardboard box that it shipped in. And now we're seeing this shift. And the point is, I think as a consumer, a lot of people buy that one device and they're like, all right, I got some trash, it stinks, but whatever. Yeah. But you guys are Lenovo. You're the top PC shipper in the world. When people buy ThinkPads, sure, people could buy one ThinkPad, but a lot of times companies are going to buy 20, 50, 100, 1,000 of these things. And all that packaging really does add up. And so it's really nice to sort of see, you guys take the lead on it. And as you mentioned, you guys are doing the best packaging. I've seen other companies have dramatically reduced what they're using. A lot of them have gotten away from plastics, but you guys have that entire shell, which I think is a really clever design. And just to clarify also with this new Z series, is it safe to say that this is a sort of what we've seen is laptops that are trying to bridge between business and sort of prosumer? For a long time, there's always been that division. You guys even have that technical division. You have your ThinkPad line, but then you would have the Yoga series for a while, and then you have the other, the other lines that you guys do for consumers. Is it safe to say the Z series is trying to bridge that between like the more younger crowd who wants a really nice laptop that they can use on the airplane, at home, in the cafe, but then also take with them to the office?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and again, you've sort of nailed it on point. I mean, these are, first and foremost, it is a ThinkPad through and through, and that means we're going to run it through the same battery of mil-spec testing, the torture tests we drive with the development of our platforms. We're expecting multi-year life cycle, meaning it can last for several years in hands. It's meant to be used by businesses to deploy into the thousands of units, from a worldwide perspective. So you've got the service and support centers located worldwide. You've got the management, security, all that fundamental need built in underneath that is relevant to the business. But we really shifted on the focus towards an outward expression on the design, the more choice, so you can drive an individual perspective. Just looking on the interior of the design, high emphasis on screen to body ratio. That has been more and more sort of an on-trend perspective. We also did a pretty significant overhaul on just the aesthetics and interior of the design. It's still very much a ThinkPad keyboard, which we pride ourselves on. I would suggest we have the best keyboard in market. I'm perhaps a little biased, but certainly put your hands on these keyboards and try it out, because we're maniacally focused on the travel, the depth, the feel, the rebound and return, and because you're going to spend most of your time on keyboard. But we did some things aesthetically or design-wise to take it, edge to edge, to go to a cleaner, more modern aesthetic. We did an all-glass palm rest with force pad. For many of you, perhaps are very familiar with ThinkPad, you know about the track point and the track point buttons. In this case, we've embedded the track point buttons into a haptic force pad, which you can also turn on or off. So you have the left click, right click, as you would expect with track point. But if you're new to ThinkPad, you haven't been using the track point, then you can enable this as a large full-size touchpad. So just trying to just sort of put our attention on those aspects to make it relevant for people new to ThinkPad, but also, of course, absolutely relevant for longtime ThinkPad users and those businesses underneath that are trying to and again, deploy potentially thousands of devices out to their end user community.
Nice. Yeah, we should definitely highlight the haptic trackpads. As people don't know in this podcast, I'm a huge nerd and proponent of this technology. And what you demonstrated is yet another example of why it's preferable to a mechanical trackpad. You know, I come from the generation that I remember TrackPoint. I never used TrackPoint. I can't get into it. It was for a time when trackpads were really poor, but then people just really prefer using it. And you guys are always in that bind of like, do we get rid of it? It's a part of our brand identity. And so you guys now can kind of get the best of both worlds. You still get the TrackPoint, but someone like me, I get my full trackpad back. I don't have to worry about those top buttons being there, plus the benefits of haptics in general. So that's really fascinating. I guess we should move on to sort of the special news about this design. So you mentioned you have the fake leather that's as an option. You can get metal. You guys are also thinking about another material to use, which I think is very fascinating. We haven't seen anyone do this. So why don't you explain to the audience what you guys are doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we look at this design, you know, part of that, you know, the use of this vegan leather is the sort of expressing the sustainable message even further, because, you know, if I just go back and reference the aluminum chassis, this is not going to express that this is 75% recycled aluminum. And so even, you know, the chassis itself is, and we can tell you, but outwardly it's not going to convey the use of sustainable materials. And, you know, one of the things we did do with the vegan leather was sort of use that as a trigger or signal of the outward expression of sustainability. That being said, you know, we are constantly looking at sort of the evolution of materials, of finishes, of colors, and we've been looking at, you know, alternative ways to sort of maintain that expression and continue the use of more sustainable materials in our designs. So I wanted to show you, these are just models, conceptual models, but I wanted to show you a couple of models that I think are quite interesting. And I'll put these on, I think we can see these on screen now. So these just represent sort of, you know, just a model rendition of what perhaps could be. And it shows sort of us leaning into perhaps different use of sustainable materials over time. So I've got two different materials. One is banana husk, and the other is flaxseed material on either side respectively. And what we're you know, experimenting with is, you know, could we actually put in a device or build a device with this type of material in place, you know, which certainly further pushes the envelope from a sustainable message. It's of course using more sustainable material as well. You know, there are a lot of challenges you have to face when looking at materials like this, or just any material for that matter, in terms of the reliability, the ruggedness. I mentioned, you know, again, the ThinkPad quality spec and standard that we expect. And so we have to go solve for those things, but these represent sort of a test or a look forward into the future of potential materials we might bring to laptops like these.
Yeah, and this is not the first time you guys have experimented with that. In fact, in front of me, I have something I've highly recommended in a review, which is your vertical mouse that uses cork.
Yes.
And I absolutely love this thing. It's also very affordable. I think it's only like $48 or something, but it's one of the best mice I've used. And yeah, so you guys do have these challenges in terms of what you can do for, you know, mass production of this, as well as how do you ensure that, yeah, metal has its limits. You can scratch metal, you can dent metal. How would you solve for the problems with using flaxseed and banana husk, which I imagine could be interesting?
Yeah, no, certainly. Yeah. I can't just take let's say a banana husk right off of a tree and drop it onto a laptop and hope for the best. So that's part of what we have to work on is just as you point out, how do we protect this material? How do we ensure that it's reliable, scratch resistant, durable to last, you know, multiple years of the life cycle of the device, yet still retain that sustainable message? Because, you know, I could you know, do a variety of different things to harden, strengthen, protect, but I may be pulling back from that sustainable message. And that's really the tricky balance we're trying to work through as we look at different materials like this. And we did the same thing when we looked at leather materials. You referenced the cork mouse as well, making sure that these materials we use, we can repeatedly manufacture in the quality standard and spec. So I don't have all the answers yet of how we would do something like this, but this just sort of shows you the expression of what we may look at in the future.
And to clarify for our audience, so only the lid is actually made from this material.
Yeah, exactly.
The rest of the laptop is still metal, including the interior part. So it's more just about the just part of it. So not going full Microsoft with Alcantara on the inside and wood on the inside. Although that would be interesting too. But then again, you have to solve for long-term problems, palm, the grease from our palms and dirt, and how that would work.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about the wear of the interior design, we would look at sort of retaining the, we like the glass palm rest, the keyboard treatment, et cetera, and the aluminum chassis, again, with that 75% recycled that we already have in the chassis itself. And the other thing is we do very much design for serviceability and repairability. So we want to make sure that we have an easy to remove bottom cover to allow you to get to components for replacing, upgrading as you wish over time. And so that's going to be an important design sort of aspect that we have built in. So just like with the vegan leather, that's really more of an expression outwardly as I have the device open and out for the materials.
Yeah, it's an interesting point too, especially because vegan leather, the whole point of vegan leather is to actually look like leather. And then you get into this, like, you have to explain to people because, you and I talked about this. HP years ago actually made a laptop that had it was real leather. The whole thing was real leather.
Yes.
And they then eventually switched to vegan leather for the follow-up, but still, it's like that does put sort of the consumer sometimes in that position of like, don't worry, they didn't murder cows for this. Whereas when you go to something like flaxseed or banana husk, you immediately get away from that, and especially since those aren't like endangered crops, right? Those are things that are mass done, and it's just like wheat, right? It's not something that's going to damage environment in terms of harvesting or you guys are cutting down rare trees to make these laptops. No,
exactly, and that's again back to the bamboo sugarcane. That's the other reason we used that material for this packaging, was it allowed us to go for a very sustainable, environmentally friendly material to use in this box, in this packing box. And so that's again just sort of it's effectively looking at the ecosystem or the full circle of the material. How can it be sustainably grown, harvested? Is there significant benefit in driving that type of closed ecosystem, as well as, again, then solving for, is it durable enough? Can it be manufactured enough? Does it protect the systems in this case? And so that's really our mantra when we look at this. It's meaningful advances in the materials, but keeping in mind, I've still got to make a good laptop in the end that you guys, that all of our customers can be proud to use and carry for many years.
Fascinating. Well, for those listening and watching this interview later, let us know in comments what you think of these designs and if it's something you guys would definitely be interested in. And to be clear, this isn't like a wood, or not wood, but flaxseed layer that goes on top of the laptop and adds thickness. This is straight up replacing it. So it's unlike what the toast covers that people put on their devices, which can lock in thermals and stuff. This is a very different native approach. I think it's super fascinating. I'd be very curious to see you guys go forward with this. I guess, I don't want to make this too long. We want to wrap this up around 30 minutes, but could we talk about one of my other favorite devices you guys announced that's made a lot of attention, the ThinkPad X13s. And I'll set this up as this is the first time you guys are merging the ThinkPad brand with the brand new Snapdragon, Qualcomm Snapdragon 8cx Gen 3. You guys have done ARM before. In fact, you guys had the first 5G millimeter wave laptop back in 2020. And you guys also had the C630, I believe it was, before that. So you guys are not new to this, but you've held off on bringing ARM to ThinkPad. And you already explained in the beginning a little bit why ThinkPad is ThinkPad, right? It's not just black laptops that have a track point. It's a whole package that goes with there. So why don't you explain sort of the history of this device and why you think now is the time for it?
No, it's a great question. Great intro as well. So yeah, so at Mobile World Congress, we actually announced this product, the X13s, and this is the first true business ready Windows on Snapdragon or Windows on ARM platform. And I can state that because we've been working on this project for over 4 years, and we've been working on it with Qualcomm, Lenovo, and Microsoft together. So 4 years ago, we had, and you're right, we had Lenovo consumer branded devices. The C630 was actually, we had announced and put in market. We had, the plans for the Lenovo 5G platform coming in to market, in subsequent years. But we were looking at, when would an ARM-based platform be ready for the business world? And a lot of that is around ecosystem, app compatibility, as well as performance. And so we sat down with both Qualcomm and Microsoft and really looked at when you sort of looked at their roadmap, when does the performance, when does Qualcomm's platform performance gains get to a level where we believe you can run your day-to-day smoothly, effortlessly on a platform? And then working with Microsoft and Qualcomm, what are the apps and ecosystem we need to get to native support such that, again, you could run your productivity apps, you've got your security apps, your general day-to-day from an Office perspective running natively. And so we plotted that course, and it really landed with this announcement of the HCX Gen 3, so the third generation of their HCX platform. That, in that roadmap, we saw significant gains. So if you compare Gen 2 to Gen 3, 60% CPU gains, over 80% graphics performance gains. So you had this right time for the performance level. And then from the ecosystem perspective, and again, I mentioned, starting 4 years ago, we started the clock. We started actually piloting with customers. I took C630s, consumer devices, into commercial accounts and had them test, had them trial, run workloads, and say, tell me which apps are not working, which apps you need to be native. And we started charting out, okay, here's the list we need. When can we drive those to native? And that sort of culminated with the launch of this platform. So it's been a long, much longer than normal, but exciting journey, because getting to the point where we can actually drop this into market, have our customers start using it from a business level perspective. But of course, as a consumer, it's for me, it really hits the mark for the first true always on, always connected device, because we're seeing 28 hours of battery life on this. It's the first millimeter wave ThinkPad that we have as well. We've also built this design from a collaboration perspective in mind. So we have a 5 megapixel MIPI camera. So if you start layering in the benefits you get with this device, added to the fact that I've got the performance, I've got the ecosystem, running native on my platform, it's really the perfect time to launch this. So I am incredibly enthusiastic about this platform because of all of that coming together and that long journey we've taken. And in the end, it's a ThinkPad. So again, I've got the reliability, I've got the deployment, I've got the security, the management underneath, and the mil-spec tested system. So I've got the durable nature of this platform, but it brings together sort of this combination of all those elements put together.
And this is also, according at least to the specs, the first time I've seen you can get up to 32 gigabytes of RAM in this device, and we've never seen that with ARM before. We were lucky for years. It was 4 gigs. With maybe you can get 8, and then finally we started getting 16. But for the first time, we're going to get 32 gigs. Yeah, and that's LPDDR4X, I believe, RAM combined with a PCIe 4.0 SSD, which is again something years ago when you guys launched some of these devices, they had like eMMC type storage, which is more affordable, but also typically slower. Whereas PCI 4.0 is, I would describe as ridiculously fast, except that we have PCI 5 that's coming out. So
we do, yeah.
But 4 is such a massive jump over 3. And we've never seen that also in an ARM device. And when you combine the RAM, that fast storage, and that new processor, this is actually going to be, I'm very excited about the performance on this. I think there's a lot of people who have questions. You know, Gen 2, you and I talked about that, wasn't much of an upgrade between Gen 1 and Gen 2. But Gen 3, it almost feels like Gen 3 shouldn't be Gen 3, should almost have an entire different name, because the performance gains seem so dramatic. And this is also has millimeter waves. You guys are also going to be selling this with Verizon and AT&T a little bit later on too. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah, so we've actually been working again with the carriers, with partners, actually worldwide. We've been working with partners in the millimeter wave aspect of this. And as you mentioned, we, from a performance perspective, we really tried to knock down the bottlenecks of performance. Like you said, moving to Gen 4 PCIe really bumps up significantly the performance, getting to that 32 gig memory footprint as well, paired with the HCX Gen 3. And yes, so millimeter wave really brings a new level of connectivity. I mean, we've got 5G enabled platforms really across my entire portfolio, but this will be our first with millimeter wave. And we've, again, worked very closely not only with Qualcomm, but also with carriers in terms of partnerships. We'll have enabled devices for carriers really worldwide in different markets.
And I think it's interesting too. You guys are pricing this starting at $1,100, and the reason I mentioned that was I checked my notes. The Flex 5G actually launched, I think it was $1,400. So you guys have actually done all these dramatic improvements in hardware, but also brought the price down substantially, because this was also another criticism of ARM that was often way more expensive than a lot of people thought it should be. But now the pricing seems to be, very competitive for what you're getting. And what makes some of your experiments in ARM, I think, really interesting is a lot of OEMs you can do two things with ARM, right? You can design a super thin device that just couldn't be done with x86. And we've seen that a lot from OEMs where they push the boundaries and you get this really slick device. You guys have done sort of the opposite. You're not trying to make the world's thinnest laptop with ARM, although you could, but you guys are making what I would describe as a really nice, thin 13-inch laptop, but you're keeping a real battery in there, because that's the trade-off. Yes. When you go to a super thin device that looks great, even the Surface Pro X, which is one of my favorite devices, it's only got a 38 watt-hour battery. You guys have like nearly a 50 watt-hour battery in this, which is something we typically don't see with ARM devices. And the reason I bring this up is because I've had some pushback. Well, the 28-hour battery life, I don't expect it actually to be 28 hours unless you're doing video playback. But you guys have actually had ARM devices that actually do get ridiculous amount of battery life just because of that reason. And I just wondering if you could just talk about that briefly in terms of design and why you decided to go with that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And you kind of nail the elements of this, because we wanted to make sure that you could truly take advantage of the battery life. We want this experience to be like your mobile phone. None of us carry our power supply around during the day for our mobile phone. You shouldn't do it with this device either. And you're right, 28 hours, it's 28 hours of video playback. What you're going to see, this will bridge you all day. And when you start carrying a device that you don't have to worry about carrying your power supply, it's truly liberating. I mean, you just don't think about it. I mean, all of us that are using laptops today, carrying laptops today, are in a constant state of looking around or making sure that we're landing, at home, in the office, or in a cafe, on the go, near or with a power supply, because we just know that, or we're not confident that we'll bridge through the day without plugging in at least once, just to top it off to get through the day. That's not going to be the case with this device. So when we made the design decisions for this, you're right, could have gone even thinner, could have taken out more battery, but when we looked at sort of the balance and feel, and it's hard to, you can't show you, but it's a 13 millimeter. Yeah, it's 13 millimeters thin. First of all, it's not thick by any nature. It's 2.35 pounds, and so when you think about that on a 13-inch chassis, that's a very lightweight. I mean, could have gone lighter? Yes, but I would have to thin it out. But the other thing is just the quality and aesthetics. So the other thing I talked about was keyboard. I'm going to have a certain amount of travel, and so I'm not going to go so thin that I have to draw back the travel of my keyboard, because I prioritize keyboard, of course, performance, and then the battery life with this. So we believe we made the right decision. We're not going to be the lightest or the thinnest, Windows and Snapdragon platform out there, probably, but I would, urge, customers to compare. Look at the weight, the feel, the balance of this system, and then the battery life that you get. It's game changing.
Right. Yep.
So we believe we made the right decision.
Yeah, it's about finding that right balance, and I think this is going to be a really exciting option for a lot of people where we just want that really long battery life, but excellent performance. So to wrap it up, the ThinkPad X13s scheduled for May, I believe, is the release time frame. And when can people start to expect the ZBook series?
Those will come out in the sort of April-May timeframe as well. Both the Z13, Z16.
Awesome. Very good. Well, Tom, thank you for joining us on this podcast. It's been really fun talking to you, and I'm really glad you were able to share this information with our audience. I'm really curious about people's feedback, especially on the ARM and as well as the new materials you guys are using. So if you guys leave us a comment below, let us know what you think. Tom, we'd love to have you back on again next time you guys do another announcement. Somebody tells me Lenovo always has magical things you guys are working on that we will probably want to talk to you later this year at some points on new announcements, because you guys are always flooding the market with new designs and interesting takes. So we'll definitely have to follow up on that. But again, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.